Well, of course, we're here to talk about the $3 trillion relief package that your colleagues over in the House are expected to pass tomorrow. But first, I do want to ask you about Senator Richard Burr. NBC has confirmed that the FBI has seized his cell phone as part of an investigation into possible insider trading. Do you think that he should step down either from his position as chairman of the Intel Committee or from his seat altogether?
Look, I haven't seen the reports. I just read the headlines, so it's premature for me to comment on that. I don't own any stocks. I've told my colleagues in the Senate that at the very least it creates the appearance of a conflict, so it's better not to own any. But I cannot comment on Burr until I know the details.
You said it creates the appearance of a conflict. Do you think that senators should be banned from owning stocks altogether?
As I said, it creates an appearance of a conflict, and I would recommend to my colleagues, it's a lot easier when they don't own stocks. I don't own any.
Well, on to the $3 trillion relief package that you guys are looking at. Obviously, Republicans in your chamber are against this. The president has said that he thinks it's dead on arrival. So what is the game plan after Friday? What are Democrats going to do when we're seeing 3 million more people file for unemployment just this week?
Well, I think there'll be massive pressure on the Republican Party in the Senate, on President Trump, and particularly on Leader McConnell to move forward. Just look at what Chairman Powell said yesterday. He said we need fiscal relief. You know, he's used just about every tool in his monetary toolbox that he can use. But if we don't have fiscal relief, he said he feared that the damage to the economy would be permanent. And, you know, in the first COVID bill and in the second COVID bill, COVID 3, COVID 3.5, McConnell and the Republicans initially resisted. But public pressure, the demand to do something because the economy is in such bad shape, forced them to come to the table. I believe that will happen again. Look, we have the greatest economic and health care crisis that we've had, certainly since World War II, certainly since the Great Depression. And there is a demand, there's a need to act. I realize that it will be spending more dollars. But as Powell said, as so many other economists, left, right, and center have said, that if we don't spend more, the consequences will be worse for the budget, for fiscal, and for the economy, as well as the health of America, than if we do. So I believe that pressure from the governors, Republican and Democrat, pressures from the hospitals, pressure from businesses. You know, if we don't have an adequate testing program, Ylan, no one's going to show up even if the businesses are open. Georgia, you know, the state where the governor was the freest to open up, I think it's 2.5 weeks since he did, and something like 6% of people are showing up at the stores and the malls. So our bill, the bill that Nancy put together, the Speaker, and the House, has another $75 billion to implement a testing program. Every country that has started a real downslope for both amount of illness and economic and going up on economic recovery has had a massive testing program. This president denies it. The biggest problem we face here in so many ways is that the president puts his head in the sand and denies truth. The truth is we need testing. He said 2 months ago everyone who needs a test can get one. We're not close to having enough tests. And let me just give you one little example. I called the mayor of New Rochelle when they were the first city quarantined. They're a suburb in Westchester. And I said, what do you need, Mayor? He said, if I had a test for everyone, we could virtually solve this problem because anyone who tested positive would stay in their homes for 2 weeks. Anyone else could go to work, shop in the stores, walk on the streets, and feel safe about it. And yet this administration has been totally derelict in coming up with a testing program. And you talked about the airlines before. No one's going to ride on the planes until they're able to test everyone who rides on the plane and says only the people who are free of COVID will get on the plane. So there's so much to do. And for Leader McConnell to say he doesn't see any immediate urge to act, what alternative universe is he in? He reminds me a little bit, let's look at history. Herbert Hoover. The stock market crashed. Herbert Hoover said we should do nothing and let's just work our way out of this without any government intervention or help. That either created the Depression, and if it didn't create it, it certainly made it longer and deeper. McConnell, The president, in many ways, are acting like Herbert Hoover, and they ought to get off the stick and join with us and come with a strong bipartisan package that pushes more fiscal relief into this economy and more testing so we can deal with the health care crisis.
Well, certainly there are many provisions within the legislation that would deal with the current outbreak. Certainly it's going to require a lot of money in order to combat this disease. However, the criticism from Republicans is also that there are lots of things in this bill that don't have anything to do with the coronavirus or anything to do with the outbreak. One example would be the repeal of the cap on the state and local tax deduction. That's $185 billion in just 2 years. So what is your response to Republicans who say this is loaded up as a liberal wish list?
Well, first, it has everything to do with the problem. One of the biggest problems we face is that state and local governments are going to go under. They can't print money like the federal government. They're already laying off hundreds of thousands of workers. They will lay off more. And some of these Republicans say, oh, well, that helps the blue states. A firefighter who is laid off, whether he's in New York or in Kansas, a Republican state, a Democratic state, is a laid-off firefighter who can't work, can't get a salary, and can't protect us. So number one is it does have something exactly to do with the problem, because one of the greatest areas we face is the state and local governments are really hurting, and many will go bankrupt shortly if we don't do something. Getting rid of that, going back to the way we used to be on salt, will help that dramatically. And second, the Republicans are saying, well, we don't like this, we don't like that. Sit down at the table and negotiate. McConnell is saying he doesn't see the need to do anything immediately. So, you know, they can point to things they don't like. They can point to things they don't like. They don't even want to talk about it. And Donald Trump criticizes Chairman Powell, who's an expert. I want to make one. Donald Trump shies away from the truth. He puts his head in the sand. That's been the biggest problem we face, whether it's on fiscal policy, where he denies what Powell has to say because he doesn't want, maybe his hard-right people don't want him to spend any more money, as detrimental as that would be to the economy and to the budget over the years. He denies what Fauci said. He said there's another side to the story. Fauci talks truth.
Well,
Donald Trump's other side to the story is untruth, not reality.
That may be the case, Senator, in your view, but are there areas where Democrats are willing to compromise? Republicans have laid out liability protections for businesses as one of their priorities in any future legislation. Pelosi has said there could be some common goals in that area. Is that a place where you could come to agreement on some type of safe harbor for businesses?
Look, the bottom line is we don't even know what their proposal is on liability. They've just said we need it. We haven't seen what they've had to offer. The bottom line is, again, McConnell keeps doing things that don't move things forward, but that are divisive, okay? The bottom line is we need to talk about what kind of fiscal relief. What do they like in, not what they need in addition, what do they like in the COVID bill that the House is voting on? What are they willing to do? And then we can have some basis to sit down and negotiate so many other issues where there might be disagreements.
Given the size of this package, granted we are in a crisis situation currently, but down the road, as we see our debt to GDP ratio continue to climb, do you think that we could eventually need to raise taxes in order to lower the deficit, reduce the deficit, and reduce our national debt?
Well,
once we're out of this pandemic situation?
It's obvious, you know, everyone says it. A year and a half ago, we passed we opposed it, but a $2 trillion tax cut, which did not grow the economy in the ways that were predicted. And the bottom line is that we have two bad choices here. Do nothing, or, and the deficit will grow worse in the temporary, or do something and make it better, ameliorate it. And despite my, worry and concern that our Republicans are sitting on the sidelines, I am optimistic we can get something done. Because in the last two bills, they sat on the sidelines at the beginning, said our way or no way, and then they had to come to the table. Steve Mnuchin was a very positive and powerful force, bringing them in that direction because he knew we had to do stuff for the economy. And the bill, for all the partisanship, passed 96-0. Bernie Sanders voted for it. He's probably the most left in the Senate. Ted Cruz voted for it. He's the most right in the Senate. I believe we will come together, but we got to do it soon. And we need our Republican colleagues to not say there's no problem, we can ignore it. For Donald Trump to say, let's take a pause. We need to act. Every week the urgency gets greater, as today's unemployment numbers showed.
And Senator, I have one final question for you, which
Sure.
is, you know, you've someone who has been very tough on China in terms of trade. You've even criticized
Yes.
the president for not being tough enough on Beijing. Some of your Republican colleagues are calling for sanctions even on China for what they see as its role in spreading this outbreak. Do you think that China should face any consequences
Look,
for not being transparent enough?
I'm no fan of China in the way they have treated America, very unfairly. But again, these are diversions, okay? No matter what China did, we've got to solve the problem here. They keep putting up extraneous issues because they're reluctant to sit down and talk about the number one issue, which is what kind of further relief do we need for businesses, particularly small businesses? What kind of relief do we need for the unemployed? What kind of relief do we need for our hospitals? How do we get testing to be as full and rigorous as it has been in other countries? Those are the fundamental questions. China is an issue. I might not disagree with some of my Republican colleagues, but it's extraneous. It's sort of a diversion from the real needs that we have, and we want to get working on those right away. Right now, we know we're not going to get everything we want, but we want to sit down and talk, and we'll get a lot of what we want because the American people are on our side. The economic experts are on our side. Chairman Powell, hardly a political figure, is on our side.